Thank you, everybody, for coming to this session today. Some of you I know. My name is Charlie Kurtz. I go by Char. We're going to be talking today about course design and why it matters in student retention. I'm over in the Instructional Design Center where we have our team of instructional designers and academic technologists. I'm not going to lie, I don't do many in-person presentations anymore, so I have some notes to keep me on track today because when I start talking about course design, I could talk with you for hours and hours. So let's go ahead and get started. So before we talk about course design, I'm going to go back to the future here real quick, and we're going to talk about just what course design is. And then for you, those of you that don't know what it is, we're going to cover it real quick, and then hopefully you start to have light bulb moments of how that applies to um, student retention. So the first thing is, what is course design? So as an instructional designer, course design is kind of elements of what we call instructional design. So that's learning objectives, aligning your assessment with those, your course outcomes in that. So that's anything from doing a course overview, setting up your, like I said, your assessments to align with your objectives. So it's kind of your pedagogical journey through teaching, right, is course design. So why is course design important? Well, one of the biggest things that instructors have is the LMS, right? That is your most powerful tool, one of your most powerful tools for providing a learning experience for students that's engaging and accessible, right? So it's like me, I drive a Jeep Grand Cherokee, it's 2021. If somebody hands me a Porsche and says, go have fun, I'm probably going to take a couple of minutes and learn what's in that Porsche, right? I'm going to find the blinkers, the windshield wipers, right? I have this powerful car, but am I going to really know how to use it? If somebody's going to give me a Porsche, I'm going to go have fun, right? I'm going to go drive a little. So I want to really learn how to manage that powerful tool, right? So this is kind of what we're going to do with the learning management system. So this might not be surprising, but a survey done in 2021, and I believe it was redone in 23, 24, Lori, keep me honest, by Faculty Focus. So students saying that some of the courses that they enjoyed the most, faculty had Blackboard pages, their LMS, that were easy to follow, simplistic, well organized. They were set up. They didn't have to spend so much time going through and finding things, right? Not surprising. Everything was clearly outlined. So real quick, course design basics, talked about kind of the instructional design. When you meet with an instructional designer, some of you may have heard of backwards design, right? So the first thing we think about is by the end of your course, by the end of the module, the weekly folder that you're setting up, what do you want students to accomplish, right? That's backwards design. So we're starting from the back. What are they going to accomplish? And then let's move through that. So what assessments are you going to have? How are you going to measure that? What are you going to have them do to understand, to see if they, can do what you want them to do? And then you're going to plan your activities. So your activities might be your discussion boards, might be case studies, your resources, the type of content you're going to use, right? So that's what we call backwards design. And all of that can be used. You all learn differently and you all teach differently, right? So you have different ways of teaching, just like students have different ways of learning. So all of that, different teaching strategies can be applied to this backward design, right? Here's a quick visual again, what you want them to learn, how you're going to assess it, what things are you going to do to get them there, your content and stuff. We have a really nice in the instructional design center, and this is really useful for faculty who are teaching for the very first time online. This is our course matrix template. It's exactly just walks you through exactly what I talked about, right? You're going to lay out your learning objectives, your assessments, your activities, and your resources. This is a downloadable worksheet that we have out on our website. An instructional design, when you work with an instructional designer, we work through your first couple of modules, your weeks or your units are probably going to be your hardest until you kind of figure out that flow. But this right here, pretty much in a nutshell, is going to help you start that backwards design approach, right? So this is a nice resource to have. So some just questions to think about. I know it may not apply to everybody when you're sitting down and you're designing your course, or even if you're looking at a course you've taught for many years. What is the purpose of your course? How does your course fit into the context of the program, right? In nursing, we might want to start out with anatomy, learning about the body, and then we progress into diseases and that, right? Where does your course fit in your program? How are your goals and objectives advancing the student careers, right? Um, if you were in your student's shoes, what would you want to expect or want from this course? So these are just some questions to think about when you're thinking about course design. So now real quick, that was a real quick in 5 or 10 minutes of what course design is. Now let's talk about how course design is going to match with student retention. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk about how course design affects student retention, hopefully give you some strategies for clear and concise course layout. We're going to identify some methods to reduce cognitive load, hopefully explain some tools and engagement tactics, and then talk about why feedback is important in course design and how you can really harness that to improve your course. So the first thing is clarity and consistency in course layout. So this is a real big one for students. You really want to reduce that cognitive load. What do you want your students focusing on in your course? Learning, right? We don't want them to have to try to find stuff in Blackboard, right? You want them to focus on making those connections, learning in that. So reducing that cognitive load. And this is really important, having the standard of navigation, the logical flow, and the naming conventions is really important for our international students where English is their second language, or even students are non-traditional students, somebody who's not familiar with the LMS. You really don't want them worrying about what's in the LMS. You want them focusing on the learning. Logical flow, so scaffolding. You want to start with the foundational stuff first and then move through complex, right? So you want to have that layup set up in a way that it's going to flow. Do you want them to read first? Do you want them to watch a video? Do you want them to work in a discussion group, or do you want them to do an assignment, right? So scaffolding that module, that unit, in a way that makes sense. Don't have them jumping around, start here and then go here, right? You really want to have that flow laid out. The next thing is naming conventions, and our speaker talked about it. You really don't think that this is going to be something, well, everybody knows how to name a file. Well, everybody names a file 1, version 1, right? So having naming conventions that are represent what you want them to do. So lecture video. I know right away I'm going to be watching something. Interactive infographic. I know I'm going to be interacting with it, or it's some kind of file that I'm going to read, or a PDF, right? So having that naming convention is also going to help prepare that student. And that's that we see a lot is a lot of people, week 1 module, week 2 module. Well, what does that tell you? Right? So naming week 1 something like Introduction to Agriculture, or Introduction to Nursing, Pathology, something or another, right? You're naming it a little more rather than week 1 material 1, right? So all of these just little steps that you can do really help the students not worry about trying to find things, but really focus on the learning and to really start off the semester right. And it kind of gives them confidence. If I can navigate Blackboard, I'm going to find things. I feel like I can do this class, right? So here's just a little example, kind of hard to see. This is the new Ultra. I don't know if many of you are in Ultra or not, but like I was saying, just keeping, you'll notice if you do modules, module 1, module 2, you can do lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson unit 1, unit 2, be clear, concise, and consistent. You'll see down here, it says assignment and then benefits of organic food. They have some good descriptions. So just adding that little descriptor with that title will help the students kind of understand what they're doing and where they're going. It's kind of like their roadmap, right? Like National Treasure, I have this map that I'm going to try to figure out. Here's another example of a good module or unit. We have a knowledge check. Health benefits for organic foods. Ultra does give a visual indicator of what the item is. So you'll see up at the top, it's a little paper. So that's an item, the link. You could even do a key, maybe if you want to say, oh, the links are a video, or just give them, some way to identify what that content is, right? So here's another good example of that. So cognitive load reduction and student focus. This is another one. In the old Blackboard, you had everything over on the left. And then back a long, long, long time ago, everybody was like, let's put all the assignments in one folder. Let's put all the exams in another folder and then have our contents. Like that was the it thing to do back then, right? Because then the students, all they had to do is go to the exam folder, find all the exams, find all the assignments. Well, they changed it up on us a little bit. So now what we're talking about is we want to put everything in one area. So if I'm working in week 1, I know what I need to do for week 1. Everything is in that folder. So I'm going to go through and work my way through it. You don't want to provide multiple folders, again, where they're clicking here to get to there. I got to go out to get to here. Everything is laid out in front of me of my roadmap for what my instructor wants me to do for the week, right? And along with that, you want to have clear communication. So in week 1, maybe have some objectives. What do you want? What are we going to learn this week? What are our goals? Maybe have a to-do list. Here are the due dates and the assignment. So the student comes in, I know I have 3 chapters to read. I'm going to have an assignment and I have to post this week. Now I need to figure out how I'm going to manage my time for me to get through this, right? You're helping them. Chunked content. I know this is going to be a little difficult for some people, but I'm going to tell you something. Students are not going to watch a video for an hour and a half of you talking about your content. It could be the most exciting thing in the whole entire world, and I'd love to tell you that they're going to sit there and listen to it. Research shows, and their attention spans are getting shorter, that they're probably going to last 8 to 10 minutes, if that anymore. So a good technique that we talk about as instructional designers, well, I have a 2-hour lecture. I have to get through the content, right? Instead of doing one whole 2-hour lecture of you talking, why don't you break it down into maybe some different key sections? So let's say I did this talk at the egg conference. So all of my examples are egg related right now. So I'm going to throw those out. So let's say you have a plant nutrition. That's your lecture for the week. You're going to talk an hour and a half about it. Instead of doing the whole hour and a half, let's break it up into 3 or 4 sections. So for the first 8 to 10 minutes, let's talk about soil composition. Talk about that, have a break. Maybe have an interactive question in there, or tell the students to go out and post something in the discussion board, or say, hey, get up, walk around. Next, come back, let's talk about nutrition cycle. Do another 10, 12 minutes. Talk about that. Have a knowledge check. Maybe do a quick, again, question. Have them post something. Have them get up and walk away, right? You're still covering your 2-hour lecture. You're just breaking it down into smaller chunks for them to absorb and retain. Your students are going to pay attention to more of those videos that are chunked and in smaller, measurable content. And it's just not with videos. You can do that with units. Maybe you have a really hard unit that is going to be a lot of in-depth reading. Break it down for them. Read chapter 7, pages 20 to 25. Go back, read it. Let's come back in. Let's do a knowledge check. You could do a quick little question or whatnot. See how they're doing, check in with them, then go back again. So it doesn't just have to be with videos. You can do it with content that's probably a little more complex and might be a couple of hours for them to go through. Does that make sense? I think that's really important, especially when, a mission of NDSU right now is a lot of moving our courses online. It's not just taking your lectures and putting them online, right? We want to keep that student engagement and helping chunking that content is really going to help your students watch your videos. And just something like this is really going to help with student retention. It's going to be engaging for them, right? It's going to be interesting. These little things, you're like, what? Student engagement, student retention. If your students are navigating, they can find things, they feel confident, they're getting into their content. Okay, I got this. I know what my instructor wants from me. I know the time. I'm enjoying the content. It's not so much, I have time to break and all that. They're going to stay. They're going to stay in your course. They're not going to drop out, and hopefully they stay and continue with the program. Engagement. This is a hard one because engagement for everybody is different at the graduate level, undergraduate level. Faculty that teaches, one of our instructors, he teaches anywhere from 300 to 400 students. So his engagement techniques are going to be a little different than somebody who's teaching maybe 40 or 50 students, right? So some things that we can just throw out there that anybody can use is knowledge checks. You've heard me refer to those a couple of times. Having brief, low stakes assessments throughout the semester allows students to feel engaged, one, right? Because you're not only doing two big tests, you're engaging them, you're checking where they're at in their content, especially if it's complex situations. It allows them for you to see if they are understanding it in real time, right? So having some of those knowledge checks. Discussion boards. I know everybody's like, me, I haven't had a lot of luck with discussion boards. For online courses, discussion boards are really crucial for students. It's like a sense of community. You can have them go in there, they can share their knowledge, they can discuss like concepts, maybe where they're struggling. If one student is understanding it and one isn't, they can discuss that, right? So there are ways to leverage discussion boards with interactions and questions that allow the students to be doing a lot of the work and you just kind of flowing in and out as a moderator. So they can be leveraged as a good tool, especially in online courses. Multimedia content might also be a good one. So having a variety of learning materials. Like I said earlier, everybody teaches differently, everybody learns differently. My learning disability, I learn very visually. So if I have to read something and I don't have any visual representation in the course, I will draw things out. So if you have different ways to express the content that you're wanting the students to absorb, like podcasts, audio, maybe some videos, visual, maybe some different reading, obviously. So having different ways of expressing the content that you're doing. Now, I do understand that some disciplines, like physics, more of your STEM, your mathematics and engineering, that's kind of hard to do. But that's when like working with an instructional designer and brainstorming, they can come up with different ways to provide that. Not only does that provide an engaging learning community, but it's really inclusive for all students, right? There's students like myself with a learning disability and maybe single mothers who having an audio version of something they can listen to while they're cooking dinner for their kids. So that just provides that engaged, inclusive environment for everybody. So any questions on that? Practical applications for student-centered learning. So I believe our speaker said, students, give me a reason why. Why do you want me to come to class? So real world examples to incorporate into your course. So here's my agriculture example again. So giving them a hands-on experience of a real world application. So have an assignment where they're doing crop rotation. They're coming up with a crop rotation. Or nursing, you have a case study that maybe you yourself saw when you were out on the floor. And then telling them, why do you want them to go through this? I'm having you do this case study because I want you to identify the symptoms, right, that you're going to need to know when you're out in clinicals, or you're going to have to know as a farmer crop rotation. These are real world examples. Like, you're telling them what's important about it, and it engages them with that content, and they understand why they're doing it. Talked about the problem-based assignment. So like I said about designing the crop rotation, that applies theoretical knowledge, right? Have them explain why they decided that. What are they pulling from the content to support what they're doing or not? Group projects, peer-to-peer collaboration. We get this a lot. We have some faculty who love it, who want to do it. They want to have peer grouping. And others are like, yeah, somebody in the group always does the work. And there's like 3 or 4 other ones that don't, right? So there are ways to do the peer collaboration with Ultra. I believe it makes it a little easier with setting that up. So no matter where you go, I have to work with a team. I have to work with multiple teams, right? So you're not only having them apply, use skills that they're going to see pretty much in anywhere they go. They're working together, and they're doing an assignment. They're applying what you're asking them to do. Again, like a discussion board, we instructional designers can provide some instructions that can help you do a rubric that will help kind of go through like what's everybody's responsibility, how do you determine who's going to do what, and then you're going to evaluate each other, right? So we have some strategies to help with that. A lot of the times the students for the most part, students like it if it's well, organized and done. Another one is instructor accessibility. This is really important for especially online. When you're in an online environment, your instructor sometimes is just a name, right? So having some kind of virtual, we call them student help hours, where you might have your virtual Zoom room or your Teams room open for students to drop in and out, right? Having, letting the students know that if you need me, I'm here, but also here are my boundaries. I don't reply to, you won't hear from me right away on the weekends. I'm spending time with my kids, but first thing Monday, within 8 to 10, I will reply back to you, right? Just giving them those clear expectations of when you're going to be available and letting them know I'm here if you need me, right? And sometimes, even though you do, sometimes the students don't feel comfortable doing it. They won't come and see you. But so these student-centered kind of learning strategies really help support and make students feel like they're engaged in their environment. I can ask questions. I feel comfortable. I have a community. And if they feel that, again, they're hopefully going to stay and be successful. And that's ultimately what we want them. Feedback. This is an interesting one because we all know at the end of the year, you have your course surveys, right? We like to say in the instructional design world, best practices, you're always looking for feedback, right? Gathering some kind of feedback, even if it's maybe just at mid-semester, just to say, hey, everybody, how are things going? And you can do that by just an anonymous survey, just checking in. It's the second, third week of class. Want to make sure you guys are finding everything that you need in Blackboard. Are you now, how are you finding the assignments? That kind of stuff. And then that allows you to make adjustments if you need to throughout the course. So if you find that students maybe are struggling, let's say you're using Teams for virtual office hours, throw out a survey, how's everything going? 4 of your students say, I'm just not understanding Teams. Like, I really want to come see you, but I cannot get my teams to work or not. Then you have a chance to pivot and either go to the help desk, give them, send them technical, or maybe move it to Zoom. So you've made that correction rather than waiting until the end of the semester once the school year is done, right? Maybe on assignments that are complex, after the student completes the assignment, say, hey, How did that assignment go for you? What were the areas that you understood well? What were the areas that you struggled with? Maybe you're missing some key instructions or just some foundational information that you assume they knew that they might not, right? It's another way to get kind of feedback from the students. If you're using a new technology, we have some new technologies that are launching the honor lock, the exam proctoring. We're going to have a new pilot for a clicker system. So let's say you want to try to use a new technology and you're halfway through the semester, or you just want to check in and say, hey, everybody, I want to know, how are we liking Mentimeter for engagement in class? You know, this is new to me. I'm asking questions. Did we find it beneficial? You know, checking in with them. And maybe you find like it's not doing what you want it to do. And you're like, I don't know, next semester, it's too late for me to go right now. Thank you everybody for your, feedback. Let's adjust it a little bit this way. Instead of using Mentimeter, I'm going to come in and we're going to ask questions. I'm going to break you up into groups. Then your students are like, wow, they're really listening to me. They're taking my feedback. I'm feeling heard. They're making, adjustments when they can, right? And I feel like, okay, we're in this together, right? I'm not just like the end of the year, the one and done, and why am I giving my feedback? I've already taken the class, right? So stuff like that can really, really help you out. And then in Ultra, there's some new analytics, some new, you can set up like warning I don't want to like flags or whatnot, but you can leverage the LMS analytics to go in and see, okay, Sarah, she's missed the last 3 assignments. We are a month in. Sarah hasn't done any assignments. I see Sarah coming to class, but she's not, I'm just going to reach out to Sarah and say, hey, notice, you haven't handed in, you just wanted to check in, are you having technical difficulties? What can I help you with? Are you struggling? So utilizing those, the analytics in your LMS, which is Ultra, to help you kind of identify that. So this is creating again, our environment where students are feeling, okay, comfortable to provide feedback. Hopefully they feel comfortable coming and talking to you. You let them know, I hear you. I can't make this adjustment right now, but it's something that I'll think about in the future, or I can adjust this way, right? You're providing that safe space. They feel heard, especially if they're struggling in the LMS or just their learning experience, right? And then that gives them the confidence. Again, we're talking about them staying, completing the course, and hopefully, finishing out. So any questions about the feedback? Thinking about it a little differently rather than just kind of the one and done at the end of the semester. I think this is an important one. Yep. So that's a good question. He asked, the question in the room was about like students with like accommodations, having extra time, and that, like how to work with it or communicate with it. Normally I would say putting in your syllabi or one of your first classes of how you want them to let you know that they need an accommodation. I believe, I'm going to pick on Lori, keep me honest here. If they go through does Cater alert the instructors that they may have a student that needs accommodation in their class if they go the official route? A lot of students, the research shows they don't identify with having it. So you could say, if you need extra time, let me know. The LMS will let you set accommodations. So if I need an accommodation, one of my learning disabilities is I have bad test anxiety. Going to take my driver's test, I thought it was going to, it was going to be the end of the world. I got myself so worked up, and then I sat there and read. That's just how I take tests, right? So I need just a little more time to kind of, calm myself. And then you could go into the LMS, say Shar needs, maybe you're going to give me 20 extra minutes to take my test. The LMS, you set it up once and it will apply it for all the for the student throughout the assessments that they need for accommodations. So be upfront with the students. If you need an accommodation, let me know and we'll work together on that. Does that make sense? Yep.
Because campus where we are, and the students have figured out, unfortunately, that it's more efficient for them to turn on course screen. And then they miss out on all the instructional, this game, list of assignments as to do. And so if something doesn't have a key date and it's still required, it doesn't show up. So I always tell students to click home, try to view the course from the home page so that you're getting all the work that we put into it, you know, in terms of designing it. But that's just something they figured it out, and so I understand why they're doing it. It's excellent.
And in the new Ultra, some of you I know are in Ultra that I've seen their face. You can kind of do a forced sequential if you want to. So the students have to go through each one, right, to get to the next one. You can leave it open to where you have the list. So it's been a while since I've been in Canvas, about 6 years, but I do know in Ultra that the instructor can decide how they want the students to see that, right? So that's a good tip. I saw another question up here. Yeah.
Previous slides you mentioned about the course materials on a weekly basis rather than in a logical structure based, like lectures and separate, assignments and separate,
Right. Right.
et cetera. But in such a case, there are certain courses, first the courses that I teach, it's undergraduate and graduate. That's one thing.
Okay.
Another thing is year by year, students' performance always different. So we need to adjust based on their learning pace. Always, sometimes we plan some lecture for 1 day. Sometimes it may run for 2 lectures. Sometimes even it can run for 3. The same thing with the lab summit. The same thing with the projects. So how do in such case we cannot just put into 1 week and then for 2 weeks something.
Right. And I think some of the nursing courses where you have like your theory and your other, so where they're kind of splitting it. First off, the goal of having that folder with the different modules is so the students don't have to jump around and try to find everything. To your point on, well, this group might need a little longer to go through the content, instead of doing week 1, maybe is there a topic that you're covering? So are you guys talking about maybe the circulatory system, right? And just have the folder naming like that. And then you put your content in there. And then if you guys do it in a week, you do it in a week, you move on to the next one, or you move on to the next one. We kind of frown upon the chapter 1, chapter 2, but if there's like different concepts that you want them to know or understand, you can build it that way and do it. And there's nothing that says you can't move your content in and out depending on the flow of the course, right? You tell your students, we're planning these 3, these 3 here. We might not get to all of them based on questions or whatnot, and I might move the next one down, right? So that might be a way to do it. Does that make sense? And I know on time, so yep. So why is it important? Student retention, I guess. Hopefully that you saw that having that clear, organized structure, not having that cognitive overload, students find what they need, clear instructions, having that learning environment for them. I love him. Anyway, thank you. That was a lot to cover. If you have any questions, let me know.